Wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone. Happy March 2nd. This is the Community Action Advisory Board meeting. I'm going to read that per the Governor's proclamation regarding the Open Public Meetings Act and Public Records Act, which is Proclamation 20-28. And due to extraordinary public health circumstances related to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, participation in this meeting will only be offered virtually. There will be a place on our agenda at the end of the meeting for public comment if we have anyone joining us on our virtual call today. So we have a very exciting agenda and a guest. We're excited to welcome Vanessa Gaston to our meeting this morning. We'll go ahead and ask that anyone who's on the call, please mute yourself unless you are a board member who is coming on to comment or ask questions. So if everyone could find your mute buttons, that would be appreciated. Also, if you could introduce yourself prior to speaking, in case we're unable to see you on your video, or if you're on the phone, just say your name and then go ahead and speak. And then we did disable the chat function, and that's due to public disclosure rules, not because we don't want you to participate, but because we would have to track that and disclose it for up to 7 years. I saw that David just joined us. Welcome, David. If you could please mute yourself as well. With that, Rebecca, do you want to take roll call?
As soon as I find where to unmute myself, yes. Alicia Topper.
Here.
Councillor Amy Bourget.
I am here.
Beth Landry, staff.
Here, good morning.
David Poland.
I'm here.
Jamie Spinelli.
Here.
Karen Kameroff.
Here.
Melanie Green.
Here.
Rob Perkins.
Here.
And we have guests Christine Stoddard and Mary for doing our sign language interpretation this morning. And we have a guest, Vanessa Gaston.
Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. So great to hear your voices. We do have an agenda, but before we dive into the content of the meeting, Rebecca provided us a draft of the February minutes. And at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
This is Karen. I motion to approve the February meeting minutes.
This is David. I second that.
Thank you, Karen, for the motion. Thank you, David, for the second. I do have just a couple administrative, grammatical small edits that I have sent to Rebecca, and those will be incorporated. None of those impact the content. So with that motion and a second and those minor amendments, any other amendments to the meeting minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please signal by saying oppose. Hearing none, the minutes pass unanimously. Thank you for that. Okay, so first up on our agenda this morning, we'd like to welcome Vanessa Gaston, who's the Director of Community Services. She'll be providing us with a director update. Good morning, Vanessa.
Good morning, everyone. Share with everybody today just to give you a high-level update of what we're doing around COVID-19 work, and then what the department will be focusing on in 2021. And then I think Rebecca asked me to give an update on the Joint City-County Homeless Board. So I will start off with the COVID work. So as you know, it's almost been a year since we have been in the pandemic. Community Services has been one of the departments that has been working very hard to try to address some of the needs in the community. We have worked alongside public health, and the staff have done a phenomenal job. We started in April of last year when we received some money from the Department of Commerce and Michael, and Rebecca, and Beth, all his staff, working with the business unit, Abdul and all his staff, worked very fast and very quickly with all of our nonprofit providers to get our motel expansion shelter up and going. And we had that up and running by April 26th. So that was very fast. We actually hired temporary staff to run it. So from April to the first part of December, which is about 9 months, we had 270 people that were served in there. It was 2 buildings. One building was a shelter for people that were high risk to the virus, and the other one was a quarantine isolation that public health actually placed people there. So for a while there, we ran the largest shelter in the county. And the shelter side was always full. So very good, quick movement, successful operations. We are now moving into doing a similar type of shelter, more stable 24/7. That will start hopefully in June. We just chose Catholic Community Services to operate that, working with a partnership with the City of Vancouver and the Housing Authority. So but we did just want to update you on that. Rental assistance is probably our largest work right now. So back in 2020, we received about 8.26 million of rental assistance. As you can see, that's how many households we serve. We did not meet all the need. We have a waiting list of over 2,000 people that did not get to receive any rental assistance. So the new rental assistance that I'll talk about in a minute, or that's going to be coming in, we will try to hit that group first. But as you can see, we served a lot of people, a lot of households, but we didn't even come close to meeting the need. We also got into something new around small business assistance. We did 1 million, and we worked with Fort Plain Forward and Mercy Corps. And the goal was to serve small businesses that were owned by low-income, BIPOC women and veterans. And so learned a lot about that. We realized that's probably not really falls underneath our mission, but thankful to staff who stepped in and wanted to try to impact that area there. So as you can see, we served 221 small businesses throughout Clark County. We did get some money, the Title V CARES Act funding from the county, to try to serve homeless programs because the rental assistance doesn't necessarily touch that. And as you can see, we did it to try to expand our support, our shelters, outreach, and our rehousing program, assistance for people that are unhoused in our community. And then right now, this number is updated. We are going to get we just received the 14.7 million from the Federal Department of Treasury funds, but we are also going to receive an additional about 15, I think it's about 15.1 or 15.3 million from the state. That's a combination of the same federal funds and the state funds. So we will be getting over $30 million coming in for rental assistance and some utility assistance. We have a number of providers that we will be working with. We plan to do some more outreach to the diverse communities, working with the same organizations that we worked with last year. I think there were close to 9 to do that outreach for us. And then we will also work with Clark Public Utilities to do utility assistance. So there will also be some additional funding that the county will get directly. We are still working with the auditor's office on how much that will be. So that will be on top of what we've already planned to receive for thing that related to, there will be some work around rental assistance again, utility assistance. We're going to look at how can we help the homeless system again. But there is a new area of more mortgage assistance. Now, that's not something we have expertise in, but we will work with the auditor to see if we can find a third-party administrator to help out in our community for those homeowners who are behind in their mortgages. So just a quick snapshot of what our department has done around this. We are going to be asking the county council to hire some project management staff to help us manage all this fund, because 30 million is actually double up what our annual budget is. So our current staff just do not have the capacity to manage an additional 30 million on top of what our regular $29 million annual budget is. So we'll be working on that in March to get the council's approval and then to move forward with hiring in those project positions. So does anybody have any questions around the work we've done around for the pandemic?
If board members have questions, you feel free to unmute your mic and jump in.
This is Rob Perkins. I have a question.
Go ahead, Rob.
Did you say over around 2,000 households or people couldn't be helped with rental assistance in the last through your department?
Yes, I think for the 14.7, we're estimating that we'll serve those people on that waiting list. And I think it's about 2,200 households. And then for the 15 million coming in, we're estimating we can serve an additional 2,600 households. So still be somewhat of an unmet need, but we'll hit a big dent into what people who have unpaid rent that's related to COVID.
Right. Are there other? I'm asking just as a, I guess as a newcomer to this, but are there other sources people can reach out to besides the RAP that you know about?
Yes. So I do know that like Open House Ministries has rental assistance. St. Paul, Vincent de Paul has some. You do have the Community Foundation has put out some rental assistance for people. We have the Housing Essential Needs is available. So there are other rental assistance for people that don't necessarily have to meet the pandemic requirements. But again, you know, we have to work with the coordinated entry to kind of help coordinate it and help refer people to all those bases. But yes, the answer to your question, there are some other rental assistance programs.
Thank you.
Vanessa, this is Alicia. We received an action alert via email yesterday from the Washington State Alliance, Low Income Housing Alliance, and it was asking for outreach to our federal representatives because they were, it sounded like there was an interpretation of Treasury in the funding that we're receiving from the federal government that we wouldn't be able to allocate any indirect costs to the funding that we're receiving. Does that impact the county as well in terms of, you know, having to go out and hire project positions or even nonprofits who may need additional support for compliance or program related activities around this money? Is that something that will impact us as well?
Absolutely. So that applies to the 14.7 million. So the way it's written right now is it's a strict interpretation of 10% that can be used for all admin, operating costs, program costs, and that has to be shared between the county and the nonprofit providers. So as you can imagine, that is not enough. The other 90% has to be direct service assistance to the recipients. So what we're trying to do is work with the auditor's office to try to shore up figuring out, can we get some additional, whether it's county general fund or some of the money that's going to come from the federal government, which our auditor's office believes that there's a little bit more flexibility to help cover some of those expenses. We are trying to figure out, can we leverage the money, the 15 million coming from the state, the 30 million total, because the state has added some additional funding to help with those indirects and operating costs, and also giving some additional money to help do some outreach to the diverse communities. So if we try to put those together, it will add a little bit of relief, but it is definitely not enough to cover the admin costs for both the county and the nonprofit providers. So right now for the 14.7, what we're looking at is we're still working on contracts. The county would keep 4% of the 10% and 6% will go to the nonprofits. And that, of course, is not enough to cover all of the costs around that. So working very closely with the auditor's office and Kathleen, the county manager, to keep them informed. And I have notified the county council of this issue. So everybody is aware of this challenge. We love the funding that's coming, but those kind of restrictions make it really difficult to deliver it.
Thank you for that clarification. Welcome, Bridget. I see that you've joined the meeting. Nice to see you.
I apologize, I was late.
That's okay. No apology needed. Are there any other questions for Vanessa?
Well, if there's not, I have a second slide.
Yes, thank you.
So this is part of our department updates. I'm actually going to give this presentation to our new incoming counselor. We do this with all new incoming counselors. It's a part of our focus of each year. What do we focus on? Some of these are ongoing that we do every year. So I'm going to just slightly touch on those because those are just things that are just common for our department that we focus on. So the first one is the mental health sales tax. You know, our department, we focus externally. We are a community-based type program. So we're always going to advocate that, you know, funding from this source goes to the community and make sure that, you know, we are balancing out between law and justice and the community side. So that is part of our advocacy for this funding. The other one is something that we have started about 3 years ago, but that is to create more permanent supportive housing for individuals who have behavioral treatment needs. Our goal is to help people get people off the street into more permanent solutions and connection to services. And so we have had great strides in working with nonprofit developers and the Housing Authority, and also the Housing Initiative, which is a for-profit, to build this housing. And then our behavioral providers have stepped up. So we want to do some more of this. The next project coming online is going to be Tenny Creek, and that is going to be 40 units of assisted living for people that have mental health issues that probably would have went to Western State Hospital, can't live there by themselves. So that's the next one coming online that we'll be looking at. Then the third one is just something that our department always does. We get property tax millage for 3 areas: veterans assistance, developmental disabilities, and mental health, which is the levies that every county gets them. So we just want to make sure that the council looks at that. So, because we utilize that funding to help support our programs, but that's something that we just always keep going in for every budget year. The next bullet is, if you haven't heard, the Wellness Center has opened up in 2020, and that is the Crisis Stabilization Center. They offer crisis stabilization beds, much needed service in our community. People can stay there, whether it's a crisis triage chair for up to 24 hours, or you can stay in a bed for, I think it's 3 days. The other part of that building is going to be an evaluation and treatment center with a secure detox. And that is for people who are detained against their will for mental health or drug and alcohol issues, to work partnership with law enforcement, the emergency rooms, and the health providers. So we'd like them to finish that up and open up that wellness center to its full capacity. So we've given them some funding, and their goal is to finish that and open that up in 2021. Again, we are not a county general fund department. We rely on federal, state, and local funding, whether it's grants or contracts or different kind of sources of revenue. And so we always want to remind the county about any decisions that impact our budgets and our indirects, because we have restrictions on the funding that we receive. So we operate very differently. We operate very differently than a general fund department. Can you guys hear me? Just trying to say it's muted. Okay. Then just as I went over before, we want to make sure all of the COVID relief emergency funds that we receive, that we do it appropriately and effectively, because we know that this funding will be heavily audited. But we also know that there's great needs in our community, so we need to move as quickly and efficiently as possible to try to start addressing the need in the community. The other thing is, I am going to start working with Michael Torres's unit, with Dee Dee Sealer's unit, and Kara Wade, to start looking at some more specific strategies to address people that are unhoused with behavioral health issues. So there are a number of different strategies in place to look at possibly how do we revise our outreach teams, how do we partner better up with the Wellness Center. There's lots of different strategies. How do we look at some more different housing that we want to tackle this problem, but it's going to require bringing behavioral health providers online much more than in the homeless system that we have done so far. So that is a strategy that we're going to really hit on in 2021. We have been working on it, but we're going to beef it up this year. And then our last thing is to the Board of Health. passed in December a resolution declaring systemic racism a public health. Systemic racism is a public health issue. As our department has been working on diversity and inclusion for 13 years, we have added equity using a racial lens. The last 3 years, we are now continuing to work internally, but we are starting to work with nonprofit providers. We have a provider cohort between providers in Cowlitz, Skamania, and Clark County who volunteered to kind of go through this work and look at how do they work internally to look at their system and practices. So it's a partnership between our department, funded with the Community Foundation, Southwest Washington County Community Health, and Beacon Health Options. So we've been working on this since September, and we will continue with them for another until September again. So more work to come in that. We have again incorporated how to look at our hiring different, our RFPs, our contracts. We've done we've finished our equity statement. We're going to be moving into our strategic plan and be using an equity lens. So lots of work in this particular area. Any questions on any of this?
This is Jamie Spinelli. I do have a couple of questions. The first one is, do we have any idea when Tenny Creek might be coming online?
Right now, I think the Housing Authority is working with the county because it's in the around some permitting issues. They have the funding. They just need to continue to move with that so they can start up the construction piece there. So I'm not sure the timelines with the pandemic, things got slowed down quite a bit. So.
And then, thank you. And then my second question is, in regards to your strategies for addressing the homeless population with behavioral health issues, in the by nameless meetings, I guess that's just actually one example, which I have participated in. One of the challenges has been reaching a place where behavioral health organizations can fully participate in coordinating with the rest of the system because of, CFR 42 and HIPAA and things like that. Have we made any progress? Or are we close to making any progress to where those systems can work together more collaboratively?
So the sharing of data is always going to be a challenge because even the sharing of data in the homeless system, there's some state laws that prevent us from sharing it with healthcare providers. And then you have HIPAA and 42 CFR from the healthcare side. So that's going to just have to be a hurdle. You do have ways to do it. You have people sign releases, but you got to explain clearly what you're sharing the information for. This is where the mental health sales tax and other funding like the Community Foundation can come in to try to figure out how do we address gaps in services that Medicaid can't cover or that some of these federal or block grants can't cover. So how do we work with them to be more creative? Unfortunately, because of the extra work my department has to do around the COVID, unless the county finds another way to do the RFP for the sales tax, we'll have to delay that because my business staff are the ones who do the work for the RFP sales tax. And right now, focus is going to be on 30 million plus coming into our department. So that's a priority. But you make a good point. It's an ongoing issue, but that should not be the reason why we don't move forward with this work.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Karen. I don't have a question. I just have more of a comment. The Legal Foundation of Washington will be awarding grants based on equity work in April, and they got an extra large amount of funding this year. So I think that the grants will be about $20,000. So they're for equity work or ongoing work, but it sounds like that even the wellness center might be something that would qualify. So it can cover everything from just daily operations to projects that are specific to equity. I think that comes out next month.
Thank you. And I just, a couple areas where I'm also working on. I am on Peace Health's community fund committee. which they put out some grants every year. I'm also on the Community Foundation Board. I sit on their grant, chair their grants committee. I'm also on All in Washington statewide efforts representing Southwest Washington. They have put out over $990,000 into Southwest Washington to help around the COVID systems and with a focus on communities of color. And so we're trying to, not only our department, but I'm trying to work with other funders to leverage up funding to address gaps in services so that community comes in, money comes into our community, but two, organizations know about it, can apply and try to influence to try to make remove as many barriers as possible. So that's some other work that I have been working on. Two other updates I'd like to just give you. To True Blood, I don't know if any of you've heard of that, but that is a lawsuit that Disability Rights Washington sued the state on because you have people being arrested who have mental health issues sitting in jail and cannot get any kind of evaluation to determine if they're competent. It's been going on for years. The state lost, and so they have been fined, and they have been putting money that they've been paying towards fines in a fund. And so they are now looking at trying to work with Disability Rights Washington to create strategies to address that population. A lot of those folks are homeless, not all of them, but some of the things that have come out of that is we do have what they call a co-responders team. Community Services Northwest works with the City of Vancouver Police Department to try to go out and address issues where the police are called and there's a homeless issue, or I'm not homeless, but behavioral health issue, to try to get them into some services because the goal is to divert them from jail. The other issue is they have hired some evaluators to try to speed up evaluation, some navigators to try to help people advocate and learn the system and navigate the system. And then Columbia River Mental Health got some rental assistance, I think it's called the HARPS, for that population to look at how to help them find housing and pay for rent. So that is there. And so that does impact, what happens to the jail because the goal is that for certain crimes, there's a whole committee that Judge Zimmerman and Councilor Mevagy and a number of people participate on to try to come up with strategies to address it on the law enforcement side. So that is being in work right now. I was on the committee to look at a new jail. A lot of that's been put on hold because of the pandemic at this point, but some of the new laws that have passed will really impact what kind of jail we get and how large of a jail we get. There's some work happening on that right at this point. I'm not as involved in that side, given the fact I'm really focused on the COVID at this time. And then the last thing I just want to talk about is this joint city county homeless board that consists of elected officials. The elected officials have the vote on that. It is made up of 2 representatives, city council members from Vancouver. It also is made up of 2 county councilors. They came together and they created it. I am there. I'm a non-voting member. Kathleen Otto, county manager's there. Eric Holmes, city manager's there. You have Aaron Land, who is from the city policy person there, along with Lindsay Schaefer. And we have been meeting. They created their charter. The elected officials created that. And I think I want to say they had their first meeting last July. And so they come together. They initially wanted to look at the entire homeless system, not just the homeless crisis response system, but every aspect to the homeless system. How does employment impact it? How does behavioral health impact it? How does law enforcement impact it? How does housing? And they wanted to look at a number of different initiatives. So there has been a change. In January, county councilors changed. So now you have Councilor Mevagy and Councilor Bowerman. It used to be Councilor Blum and Councilor Lentz. So we have a meeting Thursday, and they're going to kind of talk again about what's the focus of that group, given there has been a change, and what are some of the things that they now want to work on. So they're still trying to form what they would like to work on. Again, their role is more looking at influencing policy. They are well aware of what the homeless system looks like. And for the county, we have like 2 committees that have some, they do the RFPs for the funding that we put into homeless system. You guys have the largest role in that. Urban County Policy Board is the next one where Councilor Olson chairs, but that is more for the HUD funding. So the portion of the services for homelessness are smaller on that side. And then you have Council for the Homeless has a committee for the McKinney-Vento funds. And then the city has their committees. So they're aware of those committees. They're not trying to tell the committees what to fund. They would like to have some influence on the policy directions for the homeless system. The county councilors do look at the homeless plan. I think they would just like to know a little bit more about what's funded. You know, they're clear on the outcomes. I have shared the outcomes with them. I have mentioned to Rebecca, you guys might want to do a work session with them to keep them informed, because they're much more interested in the homeless system at this point. So, but that's where that's at with that joint city county home. They're still trying to form and kind of determine, you know, what they want to work on. And I have asked them to do no harm to the current systems, because people have put a lot of time and investment in what we're doing. And some of it is dictated by HUD and the HARTH Act and what the state is requiring for counties' homeless plans. So they're aware of that, and they understand. So, but that's that. I understood you wanted to get an update on that, but that's where we're at with that group.
My concern when that group formed and the idea was being vetted and the efforts were being put in by the elected officials, which I think is a worthy cause, and I'd like to see this, you know, electeds having a stake in policy and what's happening in our community. I always wondered how resilient it would be when there were changes in the officials that were advocating and championing that policy in that committee. So it'll be interesting to see how it survives the transition that just occurred in this last election. So thank you for that update, Vanessa. Are there questions? I know, Bridget, you had asked for an update. Do you have any follow-up questions? And I think you might still be on mute.
No, that was a nice summary of where we are on a lot of things. The new committee is interesting to see whether it duplicates or overlays or tries to change the direction of sort of the various other groups that are already working, you know, to come up with policy ideas around homelessness. So since it's sort of been in abeyance, I guess we wait and see. I like the do no harm though.
Yes, and I would say, yeah, so, you know, we really are trying to work with them to kind of look at, I think where I'm hearing all of them, even they may have different strategies or different takes on what to do or what that group should do. They all agree that their focus should be higher level and addressing where are the gaps and what needs to be done to address those gaps. So if it's additional resources, is it a policy, is it a legislative issue that we can tackle? You know, we're trying to keep them at that higher level so you guys can do your work, that you guys continue to do your work. So I don't hear anybody disagreeing on addressing the gaps. It's just they have different ways of how to go about doing it. So, and I see something in the chat. Yes, Disability Rights Washington is monitoring the True Blood settlement. They have a lot of say in that. It is not completely fully implemented across the state. There has been quite a bit of challenge, you know, getting things up and going, because a lot of it is on the law enforcement side. So working through Washington State Patrol to get some of these programs going for law enforcement or the state hiring to put in various parts of the state. So it's been a slow going, but the state is committed. They have to be committed because it's part of a lawsuit.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none. Vanessa, thank you so much for your time this morning. We know how busy you are. And I have some thoughts about the mortgage assistance and a couple questions I might follow up with you after the meeting.
Okay.
doing some work on a statewide level around home ownership, and so I think I might have some connections. Is there any last opportunities for asking Vanessa a question while we have her before we let her go about her day? Okay, thank you so much, Vanessa. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. So next on our agenda this morning, we have the July through December 2020 outcomes report. And I think we'll turn the floor over to Rebecca.
Good morning. I am going to pause for just a moment. I'm going to open up the report so you can see it. There we go. Okay, so just last month with our last meeting, we presented the fiscal year report for July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2020. And then we also presented the first quarter of the second fiscal year, which was July 1, 2020 through September 30, 2020. Now we're going to do the second quarter, which goes from July 1 through December 2020. So that's where we're at on this report. So it includes 6 months worth of information. Hopefully there's no typos in this one. We noticed with the first quarter of the report that our participation rate in the customer satisfaction surveys that our agencies were doing had significantly dropped. Now you can see that it's inching its way back up. We're at 10.8% response rate, and the overall satisfaction has also improved from, I believe it was 70 something percent back up into the green and 81% now. So that's great. You know, the agencies have, you know, been resilient in adapting to working in you know, a virtual world and working with their clients and starting to be able to do more in-person type of services. But you can see some of the comments that I added from the customer satisfaction surveys were that they would like more in-person services. So I know agencies are working on plans to do that safely. And then, you know, feeling more confident and knowledgeable in the financial world. And, you know, learning about laws and rights is really important for a lot of our clients that are participating in our program. So that's great news and great to hear. So this is our standard page of what's being funded. And when we look at the community action programs and their expenditures, they should be around 50% at this time for the fiscal year. And you can see that a lot of them are right around in there. As we've talked before, the hunger response, they support this program with a lot of other dollars also. So they tend to bill ours out very quickly and then go on to their private funding that they get for that program. And that's kind of the same with the Clark County Food Bank. However, they have stopped billing because of the other funds that they've been getting, which is fine as long as they bill out by the end of the year. There's no impact for that. And they did just start rebilling to the program right now. For the homeless crisis response system programs, again, we should be around 50%. There are quite a few that are sitting right around in that 50% range. Some of them have spent a little bit faster. And remember, there's some of these programs that received an additional allocation of CARES funds that they had to spend out before November. And so you'll see the share link in place. For example, they received CARES dollars, and so it makes it look like they've spent a whole lot of money, but they still have funding that will take them throughout the rest of the fiscal year. Same with the motel vouchers. Oh, there was a significant amount of funds that went into that program to help alleviate the stresses on our shelters, that our congregate shelters that needed to reduce the capacity to meet the safety guidelines for the pandemic. When we look at the performance of the community action program system. You can see these charts are looking very familiar and pretty similar. You know, the Clark County Food Bank, even though they're not billing to us, they are still reporting the numbers that they are serving, and it's significant. The need is significant for food assistance during the pandemic. So that is why the health and social behavioral health category looks, you know, such a long line on that part of the chart. The other programs are coming in, and there's a variety of them that are on track and some that are, you know, way ahead because of the type of assistance, such as food, and some that are a little bit behind for the nature of the program and trying to re-envision how to do services. Employment is one of those where they are marketing the program differently, and they are starting to see more clients and be able to do more assistance there. So I wanted to call out just a few things from the Community Action Program. So the Food Bank's Fresh Alliance program has distributed 720,000 pounds of food. So that's 4.5 space shuttles we're up to right now. The Vancouver Volunteer Lawyers Program has been doing a lot of work, and they've helped 85 households avoid eviction, which you would think in the pandemic and the eviction moratorium, they wouldn't be doing those types of services. But there has been a lot of landlords that are trying to skirt the system, and they've stepped in to help keep them in their housing, help educate the landlords and the tenants of their rights and their responsibilities. And this actually exceeds what they did all of last year, I believe. So they've been doing a lot of work in that area. They've helped 19 people improve their credit scores, and over 264 people have resolved their legal issues. So they've been doing a lot of work. For Shares Hunger Response, I mentioned at the last meeting that they're no longer able to give us unduplicated number of people that they're serving because they're trying to make the program even more low barrier to access. And but they can still tell us how many meals that they've provided. So they've almost through that first 6 months, they've provided almost 54,000 meals. And so I tried to give a representation. Each plate represents 10,000 meals. So I was trying to make it a little bit fun there. And then the Oak Bridge Youth Shelter has helped 14 youth exit to safe and stable housing. And that could be a variety of definitions there. It could be meaning going back into their with their guardians, because now they've worked out the issues. It could be moving out onto their own. There's different ways that might look, and it's specific to each youth. For our homeless crisis response system, you can see that the core system programs, and that's going to be primarily the Coordinated Entry, the Housing Solutions Center, and Rent Well, and then SOAR fall into that category. The Coordinated Entry, as you can imagine, have been receiving many calls for rent assistance, and with the eviction rent assistance program, you know, they've did many more assessments for services. When a person calls in, even for the eviction rent assistance program, the Coordinated Entry does still look at, are they eligible for other programs that might better suit that household's needs. And then you can see that, you know, some of the programs are significantly exceeding their contract goals, such as the Coordinated Entry or the Housing Solutions Center. Shelter is one that typically we would see it near 100% just right in the very early on in the program because of the structure of the program, but they're about 80% right now. So they are working on ways of serving more households. Our targeted prevention received an infusion of funds, and that's why you can see that's significantly over what their contracted goals are. And then I just added some things to note that talks about what's going on there. So, and then one of the bigger goals that we ask the agencies to work on in the housing or the homeless crisis response system is increasing income, maintaining income for our permanent supportive housing clients, and then increasing income so that households can be stably housed. And this is what this area is looking at here. So you can see in the different types of interventions, how they're doing, how many households have met that, and how many, what percentage of their contract that is.
Rebecca, we do have a question from Bridget. She's asking if you can explain the transitional housing program. And
Yeah.
that we didn't disable the chat, so we'll have quite a few chats we'll need to capture for our public records, but that's okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Transitional housing is a specific type of housing model that is where a typically nonprofit provider owns the housing and then brings households into their housing and then provides an array of services for a specific length of time. But when they exit the program, they must move into a new unit. So it's actually considered that they are still homeless because it is not their own housing that they're living in, and that they have to move out at the end of the program. It's best practice when we're working with youth and when we are working with people exiting an institution of care. So if they've been in a hospital care setting for quite a while, it is best practice. It is no longer considered best practice for the general public, which is why it's a smaller program. And then our last page of our report is just, kind of an overview of the demographics to give you an idea of what or who's being served in our community. And so we will make sure that this comes out with the follow-up to the email that we'll send out after the meeting, so that you can take a deeper dive and look at all of this information a little bit more. When I was updating the numbers, the percents don't seem to be changing all that much. It seems pretty steady as far as what you're looking at now in the pie graphs. Any questions or other questions about the report?
I just wondered, it's Bridget. I just wonder, when we look at the costs of different alternatives for shelter, it's sort of standard to say that emergency shelters are the most expensive response to housing people. Do we sort of do an analysis of cost per result? Does that make any sense? Like it looked like a higher number achieved a contract goal around increasing income or something like that. And I wondered how you related the cost of providing the service to the percentage success on the different outcomes. That makes sense.
We haven't done that type of an analysis before, because it's really comparing apples to oranges as far as the type of intervention that it is. So it wouldn't provide, I think, the information that you're really looking for.
Rebecca,
yeah, Michael.
Really quickly, we do look at the total cost per successful exit per person across the different interventions in the homeless crisis response system. So, total, including people who exit and go back into homelessness, all inclusive costs that we have put in with public funds. How much does it cost per successful exit in each intervention? I believe you can actually access that, Bridget, public information, going to the Council for the Homeless webpage, looking in their about section where you see the system performance measures. If memory serves, I'll look at it again tonight when I get a chance. But I think there's also a section that looks at the cost that is reported, as tracked in HMIS. It's not exact. We don't generally share that with you for exactly the reason Rebecca said, because, yes, we know that emergency shelter is the most expensive intervention per successful exit. That's generally, not always, but generally followed by transitional housing. Rapid rehousing is usually the most cost efficient, and permanent supportive housing is also extremely expensive and it's permanent, and the populations are generally different with different needs, and all of those interventions are necessary, to have a system that works. So, it would be a mistake to look at those different costs and be like, oh, this means rapid rehousing is best. We should only do rapid rehousing. We should not do shelter, right? Because there are people that, and they need shelter, and they might not, and people that even need rapid rehousing, they might not get, there's a legitimate need for shelter, there as well. And when we get into different needs, the valuation of the costs also becomes a lot more subjective, right? So,
Right.
I think what we try to look at is, do we have all the components in the system? What are they kind of like in a right proportion? And does the system look healthy, meaning that there is people can access the system and people can leave the system? Is there an adequate throughput? Which right now, honestly, for the past year and a half, I would say no, because I fully support the housing moratoriums of the governor. Incredibly necessary, and there hasn't been, the availability of housing has not been there, so people are not moving out of moving into rapid rehousing. They're not leaving shelters. It's harder to get people off the street, in addition to all the barriers that pandemic has with person-to-person contact, doing outreach and stuff like that. So in many ways, even though there's been a lot of funding of programs, to a large extent, that's been necessary to maintain existing capacity and maintain the people that are currently in the system. And we haven't had a lot of people entering the system that needed to enter the system, and we haven't had a lot of people that have been leaving into permanent housing. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's it does. You sort of wonder too whether is exit from shelter, emergency shelter, to one of the other, the permanent supportive or the rapid rehousing, is that, where does that show up in the chart that Rebecca put up earlier? Like, that's considered a success, right?
I don't think that, Rebecca, I'd have to look at your chart again. I don't think that the percentage of exits to permanent housing from shelter is in there, but you can look at the number by quarter and by year, as total system from shelters and program by program on the Council for the Homeless webpage.
Yes, and that's exactly why I don't have it in this chart, is because it is available elsewhere. So on the report, if you go to this website, or if you just go to councilforthehomeless.org and then go to the reports section about homelessness and then reports, there's a ton of information about the homeless crisis response system overall. And so we didn't want to duplicate that effort in this report.
No, thank you very much.
And generally, right now, it's just under 30% percentage successful exits to permanent housing from shelter. And that's not unusual if we look back through the years. It's kind of maintained.
Any other questions for me about the report? All right, I'll change us back to the presentation.
Rebecca, it took me a while to find. Was this the one you showed me the other day during the orientation?
Possibly. We went over lots of reports.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll assume it was.
All right. For some reason, there it goes. Okay, now.
Any other questions for Rebecca before we transition? All right, great report, Rebecca, as always. Thank you so much. Next up is Michael to give us a legislative update.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This will be quick. So regarding state updates, Rebecca has emailed you 2 reports that I encourage you to look at. The report that says Paul's Tracker, that is the legislation, the state legislation tracker by the Association of County Human Services that we generally receive. You know, either it varies a little bit, but on a weekly weekly or bi-weekly basis from Juliana Rowe, which is the legislative person for the Washington State Association of Counties, Association of County Human Services. So that tells you the priorities from the county association perspective and where those different bills are at. The other report that you have in your email is the Clark County its lobbyist report. So that tells you kind of like where the county council legislative priorities are. So in terms of status and dates that are important, you know, February 22nd was the date that bills had to advance out of committees. The next big deadline that is coming up is March 9th, when bills need to be moved out of their house of origin. And the other, I think, big thing we are expecting are budget proposals. The state revenue forecast is going to be March 17th, and the Democrats, which, you know, have control, they're waiting on the release of their budget proposals until that date, once the revenue forecast is done. On the federal side, everything right now is really being taken over by the passing of the $1.9 trillion relief plan. That is what Vanessa referred to in her presentation as the American Rescue Plan. And that has something like $5 billion for homeless efforts. That is inclusive of what we are expecting to be an additional $35 million for rent, utility, and mortgage assistance coming directly to Clark County out of that bill. You know, there's a lot that is in there, including additional dollars for weatherization, LIHEAP, et cetera. That passed the House last week. It is going up for the Senate right now. We are expecting there to be changes to the bill that passed out of the House, because the Democrats can really not afford to lose any votes. And there are a lot of things that are pretty controversial in some circles, you know, such as increasing minimum wage to $15, you know, that are associated one way or the other with the bill. So just today, it was announced that President Biden is going to be meeting with the Senate Democrats to discuss this bill like this week. So they're going to be having some meetings. But that's what's going on at the federal level. And that's all I have in terms of legislative updates, unless there are any questions.
Any questions for Michael? I know there is a chat from Amy. I'm not sure, Amy, if you want to make a comment or just have that on the record. Thank you for your comment. It's amazing how fast the political environment changes, especially when you're tracking bills. So thank you so much, Michael, for your work keeping us informed on the federal and state level. There are
Sorry,
Sorry.
Amy. I just
Hi, Amy.
thought it was easier to type it out that way, so I wasn't interrupting people. But I just moved this up, and it's like it is so unaffordable for people to even try to move right now. I mean, like I said, it was $4,475, and I have a housing voucher to move. Like, things have totally changed in the last 4 years. So much that it's, I mean, without Council for the Homeless helping me pay my deposit, I wouldn't have been able to get in here. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, everybody goes through property management places too, and they have their criteria is unless you have A1 credit and you know, it's really hard. I think that some things need to be looked into and all that, because like I said, if I didn't know the secret little handshake, I wouldn't be where I'm at now, you know, because it wouldn't have been, I wouldn't have been able to.
Absolutely. And, I'm very thankful and excited that there are a lot of dollars that are coming into this community, whether we're talking the $14.7 million of direct treasury allocation to the county, or we're talking the $15.4 million of the treasury dollars that are coming to us from the state, or these additional dollars, which we're thinking is going to be about 30 million for rent assistance, rent and utility assistance coming through the American Rescue Plan. And I guess, answering the ongoing question that I've heard, including in this meeting, which is like, where else is there assistance, and how many people is this assistance going to help? And to be really, 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 really clear, yes, there are other places to get rental assistance, like St. Vincent de Paul's Community Foundation provides assistance on a regular basis to various service providers. And the reality is there is no place in this community has any level of assistance that is sufficient to meet the need. And based on what I've seen in estimates from the State Department of Commerce and Council for the Homeless using census data and current economic data, we think there are more than 15,000 households that need rent assistance on an ongoing basis and have arrears in rent. And as Vanessa said, these $30 million we're currently getting are probably going to help around 4,000 households. And that's just based on, if you give every household, help them with 6 months of rental arrear, $6,000 worth of rental arrears, that's going to use up all the money and only touch like just under between 4,000 and 5,000 households. And the crisis that is out there has really impacted households a lot longer than $6,000 worth of assistance. So, reality is we could be getting another 60 or 90 million dollars, and it would still not, there'd still be need out there.
It's kind of like that it's a waste of money though when we do these for these motel vouchers and stuff, because I just stayed in a motel a lot, the La Quinta in Salmon Creek, and one night I remember there was 14 people that I knew that were in there at one time. That means 14 rooms were being occupied, and I know for sure, I didn't ask all of them, but 5 of them were vouchers. But you get that from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till checkout at noon. That's not even, it just seems like, I don't know if there's like, I just see a lot of money being wasted on those things that I don't know. I'm asking you guys, you guys are all the smart ones to come up with the magical thing. But I mean, I've just lived this and seen this, and it was like, I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot of people living in hotels and motels that we could, I don't know.
Alicia, I have a question. It's Rob Perkins.
Yeah, go ahead, Robin. Thank you for that experience, Amy. It's very important for us to hear as a board as we move forward in our work. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, I repeat that. Thank you. Michael, it sounds like what you're saying is that the need is, the chronic need is 3 times the funding assistance for COVID. It's 15, you said 15,000 households need some kind of chronic rent assistance.
Was that the question? Or
yeah, that's essentially the question is that we're getting all this funding, I guess, for meeting the acute need, what the pandemic has done, but that there are 3 times as many people that need help for households.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard to differentiate between what is acute need, how much of need that's directly caused by the pandemic has turned into some, just out of necessity, out of something chronic, and longer term, because that's what it takes to recover. And what was a previously existing deficit of support already in the community, because you have these overlapping things. But, bottom line is the resources for economic assistance, certainly housing economic assistance in this community, statewide and nationally, are really insufficient to meet the demand, which is why when you see eligibility guidelines to any of these rent assistance programs we put out, they're limited to, people that make 50% or below of area median income, or there are other, eligibility restrictions, because you already know that it's, the resources are insufficient to cover everyone's needs.
Right. Would it be true to say that we're still recovering in that sense from the Great Recession and the housing disruptions that occurred then?
That's a little bit out of scope of what we're talking about. I've the reality is, yeah, I mean, our homelessness is a structural problem. That's it's the result of a lot of structural problems in our economic and cultural system. It's not an accident of a temporary economic place we are in. And ending homelessness is not going to happen with a rescue plan or an economic relief package, because the root cause is more structural. So ending homelessness really will require a more in-depth structural approach, and how we do revenue, how we do expenses, who they go to, stuff like that.
Thank you for clarifying that for me.
Thank you for the question, Rob. Any other questions for Michael? Hearing none, I do have a chat from Peggy. Unfortunately, she had a 9 o'clock appointment, so she needed to step out. But she asked if we have questions about the city's affordable housing fund. We can do a site search on the City of Vancouver website under the search term CDBG, and then we can see what's being recommended for funding for the Community Development Block Grant, the Home, and the Affordable Housing Fund programs. So looks like the City of Vancouver website will be a resource for us if anyone on this board is interested in an update. What we might do in the future is move, if she wants, if it's more advantageous, move Peggy up on the agenda if that's more convenient. So we're glad that she was able to join us, but unfortunately no report. And with that, Rebecca, is there any other items of business before we move on to public open forum?
That is all I had on the agenda today.
Okay, are there any items from our board members? Okay, are there any members of the public on our virtual meeting this morning that would like an opportunity for public comment? Are there any members from the public wishing to speak today? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close public comment. And with that, other business, just as a reminder, our next meeting is May 4th, and our meeting will be from 8 a.m. until 9:30. At this time, we're still scheduling our meeting to be virtual via WebEx. If there's some major change before then, I'm sure Rebecca will communicate, but everyone can just plan on joining virtually, which is nice for me, less driving and don't have to worry about parking, but we'll miss seeing everybody in person. So with that, is there anything for the good of the order before we adjourn? Okay, hearing none. Thank you everyone for joining us and for your great comments and questions. Looks like there may be another chat comment.
That was me, Amy. I was
Yep,
just wondering if the day
go
center
ahead,
was
Amy.
open, or if they were planning on opening the day center, or is that something that, is it already open? The day center? You know? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
I
we can
hear
hear you.
you regarding the day center. Beth, do you have any updates on the day center?
No, I do not, and I think we can follow up with Peggy, or the most appropriate person to reach out to would be Peggy or City of Vancouver staff for that update.
So it looks like we'll follow up with you, Amy, with that response to the question.
I was just wondering if there's anything open for anybody besides the casino. Be warm. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I know it is really difficult times right now. Okay, well, thank you all. And it's 9/11. We'll go ahead and adjourn. Have a fantastic Tuesday. Look forward to seeing you all in May, if not before then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.